Welcome everybody to the webinar titled How to Manage Your Emotions Effectively. We're going to talk about how to use your emotions properly and manage them effectively in 3 different areas or lifestyles, if you will. Okay, so my name is Mendy Dubov. I'm the founder of Yellow Mentality. We're going to talk about that and what Yellow Mentality is in a second. I do some public speaking as well, and I am a peak performance coach. I work with people from anywhere along the scope of stock trading, athletic performance. I work with performers. I've worked with actors. So anything really along the lines of being completely conscious and present in a moment, which is extremely important when it comes to performing. Those are my clientele, if you will. So again, I've worked with all different types of performers, and it's all about becoming present in a moment and being there with your whole entire being, which is essentially what Yellow Mentality is, and we're going to talk about that in a second. Kristen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Kristen Beasley, sometimes referred to as Dr. B. I'm a relationship coach, and I work with anybody in a relationship. So relationship can be defined as parent-child relationship. It can be defined as a working relationship with a colleague. It can be defined as a friendship or a love relationship or partnership. Or if you're struggling with finding that, then also finding that person to share your life with. So I also do public speaking on a variety of different topics. My most recent was actually on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but I also do a lot of public speaking engagements around the neurobiology of relationships. So I will pass it off to my colleague, Denise.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Denise Holsey, and I too am a coach. I'm an executive and leadership coach. I work a lot with people and clients who are interested, maybe stuck in their careers, and they're looking to move to the next level, whatever that level or transition may be. I also do some HR consulting. And in addition to that, I am also a speaker.
Awesome. Okay, so everyone hears, and anyone here probably that is at this webinar has heard of Yellow Mentality. And I get asked all the time, what is Yellow Mentality? Who comes up with an idea of a color and a mental being or a mental mindset? What kind of idea is that? What is the Yellow Mentality? I get asked all the time by my friends, by new clients, by colleagues, by everybody. And what essentially Yellow Mentality is a combination of 2 different ideas. We have a color and we have the mentality, which is a mindset. Okay, so yellow in psychology, every color represents something different. If you look at Disney characters in general, you find that every character represents their emotion of their personality. So Oscar the Grouch represents this grouchy old man, is so to say, where he's always grouchy, and that color represents that emotion. So yellow in psychology represents positivity and energy. So the yellow part of the mentality is always being upbeat, always being positive, always being optimistic about what's happening in your life. Okay, mentality is the mindset that you have. So putting together a yellow mindset, if you will, is having a positive mindset in all times, having an optimistic attitude, having a positive attitude when everything's going wrong, when everything's not working out for you. If you're able to have a yellow mentality in those moments, and we're going to talk about, each of us are going to talk about different lifestyles where emotions might come in, and if you can stick with your yellow mentality, if you can have a yellow mentality in those hard times, then that is the peak of what success, personal success would mean for you. That's how you really achieve full mastery as a person. You become unshakable as a person. Nobody can hurt you emotionally because you have this yellow mentality deeply rooted in your mind, okay? So yellow mentality is your state of being in a moment. When coffee spills all over your shirt, then you're about to walk into a huge meeting that's going to decide whether you get a job or not. That attitude that you have in that moment is going to determine the next hours, X amount of hours of your day. And absolutely the meeting that you're about to have. And if you can kick in that yellow mentality in that moment, that's how you become effective, and that's how you become unshakable, if you will. Also, yellow mentality represents the idea that thoughts lead to feelings. We're the only creatures on this earth that we can think something and feel it. We think of a negative thought and it leads to anxiety, it leads to high stress. And again, the idea of yellow mentality is thinking positive in these moments will allow you to only give you positive feelings as opposed to negative feelings when they matter most. Another thing that's important is to remember is that your mind is a muscle. Your mind you can acquire certain traits, and you're not born with certain things. A lot of people think, oh, I wasn't born smart, so that's the end of my education or my 4.0 GPA. But that's not true. Your mind is able to grow and adapt new ideas and new concepts as you learn them. And that's a lot of what yellow mentality represents. Again, that positivity and being optimistic about what you're able to achieve and what you're able to learn. And nothing really is impossible for you. It's just a matter of learning it or adapting to new areas and new scenarios in your life, which will allow you to really reach your ultimate potential.
So just as an overview, today we're going to talk about 3 different emotions from 3 different perspectives. The first emotion is going to be sadness. And within that realm, we're going to talk about sadness, what it means from a perspective of performance, from a perspective of working in the workplace, from a perspective of relationships. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about how to reframe those emotions and how to be present given those emotions that come into your life. The 3 emotions will be sadness. The second emotion will be anger, because believe it or not, some of us get angry from time to time. And then the last emotion will be excitement, and how to be present and how to appreciate that emotion from a number of different perspectives.
Okay, awesome.
All right, so hi everybody, welcome. And we're gonna start off with feelings in general. Now this is probably my favorite topic to talk about, because feelings are who we are. And everybody has big feelings about all sorts of things. Some of them feel positive and some of them feel negative, but really feelings are neither. They're not good, they're not bad, they're just the way we feel. And feelings exist at birth, and it's one of the things that's so important to realize is that we learn how to feel from others. We learn how to feel from others, and then we manage that experience and those feelings by becoming self-aware and really conscious of our body and our mind working together. And so feelings are manageable. We don't want them to go away. We want to be able to feel them and process our way through them and learn new things about ourselves. So they occur in a relationship, and we're gonna share with you some other things about feelings. All right, so there is a neurobiology to emotion. If you look at these 2 pictures, this baby crying and not being responded to is sending a neurological chemical cocktail through this baby's brain that says, when I cry, nothing happens. Nobody responds to me. And that's very important to recognize that the beginning of life is the wiring of how we respond to fear, anxiety, happiness, comfort, joy. And then you can see this other baby in the picture above that's being responded to by young children as well, and taking care of her in a sense as something is distressing. So whenever something happens, somebody smiles at you, oftentimes people find it impossible to not smile back. That's a neurological response in your brain to smile. Fight and flight, that happens so quickly. Your body says, Be aggressive, run away. Brain chemicals, there's a decision being made at the very core of your being that's not conscious. Sometimes we say the phrase seeing red, and that means rage. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but seeing red is a neurological response that actually begins in infancy when a baby witnesses violence on a regular basis and their body has no way to put words to it. Then the fear is actually translated into rage, and that can be a real problem that we see in our society. The last and certainly not least is love, and we all love the feeling of love. And again, it's a neurological response. If you eat chocolate, ironically, the reason people are so into chocolate is because it triggers the same neurobiological response that we get when we're falling in love or when we are in love. So next time you eat a chocolate bar, you'll know what that feeling is like.
Okay, so we're going to start by talking about, and Denise mentioned, we're going to talk about 3 core emotions. We're going to go through sadness, anger, and excitement. Okay, so being that I work with people in performance, I'm going to cover the performance aspect of these 3 core emotions. Okay, so starting with sadness in performance. Sadness often comes as an introspective self-anger. And what I mean by that is when we become angry at ourselves, we turn inward. And that often turns into sadness. So we become upset for who we've become and how we've let ourselves down. We feel like we lost something. You know, if you look in this picture over here of this athlete that just lost a tennis match, you can see that it looks like she feels like she's been defeated by herself. She looks self-defeated. She looks like she's let herself down or somebody else down. She looks like she lost something, okay? Because sometimes it can be a game if it's a performer. Sometimes it can be a person that we lost and we're feeling sad. And like I said, it can be a belief in yourself. When you lose belief in yourself, sometimes that can be the hardest hit of sadness, because when we feel like we lost ourselves, we all know that sometimes that can end in suicide, which is very, very tragic and unfortunate. But when we feel like we've lost something, we turn to sadness as an introspective self-anger. We're angry with ourselves, and we feel like there's no one else to blame it on. And we're going to talk about how regular anger, often we turn to somebody else to blame because we don't want to take the blame. So we say, it's your fault, and we start screaming at the person next to us or our teammate or our coworker or our spouse, right? But when it comes to sadness, I've let everybody else down, I've let myself down, and now I'm turning to this inner sadness where I feel like I'm lost. And it's also very important to remember that when you do feel like you're in this state of sadness, it's important to feel that. And it's a process that every person has to go through. And I know Kristen's going to talk about this a little bit, because I know it's very, very important, especially when it comes to losing somebody in a relationship that you had a relationship with. It's a process that you have to go through. And if you try to get out of that process too quickly, it can be very, very unhealthy for your emotional well-being. And lastly, it's important to realize where it's coming from. Where is the sadness coming from? Is it coming from you losing a person? Is it coming from you feeling like you weren't good enough? Is it coming from you feeling like you should have done better? Where is that sadness coming from? And a lot of times that can give you insight into how you want to manage it and how you want to be better. And we're going to talk about how to deal with each of these 3 core emotions at the end, or closer to the end of this webinar. We're going to talk about how to deal with these 3 core emotions. But just in this specific slide, it's important to bring up that it's often crucial to remember where it's coming from. Where is the sadness stemming from?
So what might trigger sadness in the workplace? Well, think about it. It could be something as simple as somebody making an inappropriate, disparaging comment to you or about you, or within your earshot. Or it could be working in a toxic work environment where rumors run rampant, and as a result, you know, it makes you feel sad. And as Mindy said, when people are experiencing sadness, many times they take on the problem as their own, whether it's that or not. In other words, they internalize the issue. It could be something as devastating as receiving a layoff notice, when you just knew that you had the job and you were looking far into the future and could see retirement at the end of the road. And now you've got to refocus and you've got to reframe. It could be overlooked for your achievements. Say you're a hard worker, very introspective, you come to work every day, work hard, and nobody really notices what you do because you don't, you know, stand on your desk and you're not very visible in terms of how you are seen in the workplace. But all in all, it's a feeling of being a victim. It's a feeling of being not good enough. And I recall once, very early in my career, someone saying to me, and it's an old commercial, when you're experiencing sadness or you're experiencing anger, which we're going to talk about in a moment, this mentor said to me once, never let them see you sweat. And you may even remember the commercial. It was a deodorant commercial. But the lesson here is when you are feeling sadness, it's important to recognize it. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute, because it happens to all of us. It's an emotion that we all experience.
Sadness in relationships. Well, for starters, sadness is an emotion and that we can never get away from. So when people say, gosh, I never want to be sad, of course, we don't really want to be sad, but life is all about this spectrum of emotions. And without sadness, we wouldn't really know what happiness is. So we have to feel our feelings. I'm going to continue to say that. Sadness can come into a relationship when there's a breach of trust and fidelity, if there's a just lack of communication. Feeling vulnerable can also just make us feel sad. Recognizing that sadness comes from a deep place within us is important, and recognizing that it probably touches on a trauma that we had early on. And that will wake up our awareness to some degree in how we experience and move through sadness. So recognizing if somebody if somebody lies to us or cheats in a relationship, or they're just difficult, we're just having trouble communicating, we can look back a little bit and say, where was the relationship before where I had this same feeling that's now triggering this sadness in the relationship that I'm in right now? And so it's important to take a little bit of ownership of the feeling, while at the same time looking at, okay, the person on the opposite side of the relationship who's contributing to the sadness as well. And then that's where you know how to take the next step and move forward.
Okay, awesome. So anger in a performance. Anger can often be shown to try to receive validation. And this is a new idea I've come up with recently, that not always do you see, if you were to be hiding, or if you would look at cameras from an athlete or a performer practicing by themselves, you wouldn't usually see them getting angry when they mess up, or if they miss a shot, or if they miss a catch, or if they mess up a specific move in their performance, in ballet, whatever it is. You wouldn't see somebody go as crazy or start cursing as crazy, or show body language as crazy as if you would when there are their teammates or their people that are watching them around. And the reason for that is because when we get angry or we pretend to be angry, we're looking for validation. We're looking to show the people around us, the teammates that we're with, the opponent that we're playing against, whoever it is, that we care that we're not performing the way we want to. And what happens is we start to live the performance that our emotions are giving off. So if we get angry during a performance, that our performance will start to emulate that emotion. If we're excited and we're motivated before a performance, our performance will emulate that emotion. So if you're getting angry during a performance, which looking for validation is not something always that you can control. It's not always something that you can monitor as much as you want to, because it's something that you're looking for. If you're lacking validation and you want it, you're going to do things sometimes subconsciously that are going to try to get you to that emotion, try to get you to that validation. But it's important to remember that when you portray a specific emotion during a performance, your performance will start to emulate that specific emotion. Okay, so if you're afraid before a performance, your body language will start to show it, whether you like it or not. And whether you think other people see it or not, they do, because you're going to start to play the way that emotion is expressing itself. And we've talked about this in the previous slides, which is realize where it's coming from. Where is your anger coming from? Is it coming from you not being enough? Is it coming from your performance not being up to par where you wanted to? Is it coming from you wanting to blame other people? Because often anger comes from trying to blame other people. You mess up a pass, and in order to take the blame off yourself, you'll blame somebody else and get angry at them, but really it was your fault from the beginning. But in order to take that blame off yourself to make yourself feel good, you'll blame somebody else for it. You'll blame your teammate for missing the catch when it was you that threw the pass too high. So realizing where this anger is coming from will help you ease that anger. Another thing that is something worth mentioning here is that when you get angry, energy is contagious, and any emotion that you're expressing is going to be contagious throughout the team. So when you get angry, if you're the captain of the team or you're a leader of the team and you get angry, your whole entire team feels that. And if you think that that's helping everybody else perform, it's not. And by blaming your teammate for missing the catch is not helping him, or it's not going to help him perform better. He knows that he missed the catch, and you should know that you put the throw too high, or you passed the ball too low. But blaming your teammates for it and getting angry is not going to help anything. If anything, it's going to make it worse 100% of the time, because that emotion is now going to be expressed throughout the whole entire team. So if you're angry inside and you're not expressing it, that's on you. It's your job, and it's your responsibility to get that anger out of your system as quickly as possible. But the second you express it and it becomes contagious to the entire team, you're bringing down the whole entire team. And now whatever momentum you were looking to gain through your performance as a team is now gone out the window, because everybody is feeling this specific emotion throughout the entire team.
Wow, anger in the workplace. Now, unfortunately, we have too much of that going on right now. All you have to do is turn on the news and see how people are acting out in physical, violent ways to things that are going on in their lives, be it something that's going on in their lives personally, in a personal relationship, or it might be a situation at work. And anger in the workplace can have very, very, very negative consequences, as you can well imagine. It can affect your employment as one situation. Obviously, it has physical effects, it has psychological effects, and it's very impactful. And just a few examples. As we were talking about sadness, where sadness is a situation where you're turning your anger inward, if you will. Anger is a little bit different, where you're lashing out at other people. Perhaps a team member takes credit for a project that you worked really, really hard on and you originated. And as a result of them taking the spotlight from you, it makes you angry. Maybe you're getting all kinds of different conflicting interests or conflicting messages from your teammates, or even from your boss or your bosses, your higher ups, where you're being pulled in a lot of different directions and you're getting different information and conflicting priorities, and it's very difficult to manage. You're getting mixed messages, you're getting conflicting messages because you have a way that you do your thing, if you will, and now you're hearing a different message and you're being asked to do it differently. But again, it can have devastating effects. Recognize that it's an emotion, recognize that many, if not all of us, have gone through that emotion, but being able to manage that, especially in today's workforce, is absolutely paramount.
Well, anger is the outward expression of sadness. And like I said before, that baby that's not responded to and ignored will build in some wiring that doesn't allow them to regulate emotions necessarily. A child grows up in an environment where it's sort of 0 to 60 in order to get attention. And babies need attention from the get-go. So anger in a relationship, I think it's so fascinating to look at these two images, because this is a young child and a grown man, and they have pretty much the exact same expression on their faces. And it's not the same person. So what we can tell is that this man did not learn how to regulate his emotion. So his sad feelings of not being heard as a child are now being expressed as a man who doesn't know how to control his sad feelings or process them or learn from them or have insight from them, like I think Mindy or Denise mentioned earlier. So it turns into rage. Anger in a relationship is the outward expression of sadness. It's the outward expression of not knowing what to do. So people can go from 0 to 60 in a very short amount of time, which often can end in domestic violence. People who also reveal their anger in a relationship do it in ways that maybe aren't as obvious as this, where they're just screaming, but they show it in ways of manipulation, of sabotaging the relationship, and just in fear types of behavior. They snoop in phones, they snoop in their partner's stuff. And that is really an expression of anger, but it also has this backstory of sadness, meaning distrust. Remember, we were talking earlier about sadness is the breach of trust. So this is the flip side of that. And now we're expressing it through manipulation, sabotage, and fear. So if this is part of a relationship that you're participating in, the big question for me is why? If we don't address the anger and sadness, then that relationship has the potential for staying unhealthy for a long period of time.
Okay. So the last of the 3 core emotions that we're going to talk about today is excitement. And it's when we were talking and preparing for this webinar, it was interesting because anger and sadness are somewhat similar or on the same spectrum of an emotion, right? And we talked about how one could be an inner anger that turns into sadness, but excitement is almost like the other side of that. It's like, it's nowhere, anger and excitement are 2 totally different emotions completely. And it's interesting because if you look at performance, you might see all 3 of those emotions on the court all at the same time. If you have an athlete that just wins a championship game, he'll be excited and elated with happiness, while the person that just lost, that's right next to him on the bench right over, is either burning angry because they lost, or extremely sad and borderline depressed because of the situation they just found themselves in, which is a very interesting contrast, where you have two people that are in two totally different mindsets and perspectives just because of information that was given them, right? Let's say you have a tie game in a basketball game, in the championship basketball game, and one team makes the game winner. It was one piece of information that made one person completely excited and happy versus completely angry or sad. So you have these two opposite contrast emotions that are often decided by one little piece of information, one little event, one little scenario that happens that can totally shift the way you're coming up emotionally by one piece of information. So excitement comes from reaching. It can come from reaching an achievement. Like I said, it could be winning a basketball game, or making that trade that gives your stock company, your investment company, a huge edge over all your competitors. Or it can be sometimes envisioning what that achievement would look like. If I would start talking to you about how you're envisioning, or you're thinking about a goal that you have, you start to get excited. Your blood starts to bubble because you're thinking about what's going to happen once that achievement starts to come into reality. So I might say, okay, you're going to go out and you're going to go do this many investments, and your return on your investment is going to be 1,000%, and now you're going to become a millionaire. Just thinking about these little things starts to get you excited because you're thinking about what your achievement's going to look like. Fear and excitement are often the same emotion coming up. It's just a matter of perspective. And at Yellow Mentality, we talk about perspective a lot, because often getting out of a specific rut, or getting out of a feeling, or getting out of a slump is just a matter of shifting perspective. It's just a matter of how you're looking at the specific scenario. Like I said, you're given a piece of information, and the way you interpret that information will give you specific emotions. So fear and excitement are the same thing. It's just a matter of how you're looking at it. You can be right before a performance and you're scared, but if you just reframe that emotion into excitement and tell yourself, I'm not really scared as much as I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm excited for what the future is about to hold. I'm excited for what this event's going to give me. And all it is just that little shift in perspective that gives you a whole new meaning and a whole new way to look at the emotion that's coming up for you. Another thing is putting your emotions in perspective. And a lot of people think this is interesting, what I'm about to tell you. But if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, where you can be on top of the world because you just won a title, a high school championship game, or the NBA finals, or whatever it is. The list of achievements, of your personal achievements, can go on and on. But thinking about what someone else is going through on the opposite side of that spectrum, or the contrast to what you're feeling in that moment, what's the other person feeling? So you just hit a game winner in a basketball game, and now you're elated with joy. What's the person that was defending you feeling? And when you put that emotion into perspective, it gives you a whole new understanding for that event or that emotion that you're feeling in that moment. So you just hit a game winner in a basketball game, and now you're like, oh my God, I'm on top of the world. I feel like I'm the best. I feel like I'm amazing. I just won the championship game. My team is going to be so proud of me. And if you look over to your right and you see your opponent with his hands in his knees because he feels like he's just failed himself and his team, that feeling that you put in perspective, and you look at that person and try to feel what he's feeling in that moment, that you will never feel ever again. When you see the trophy hanging in your room on your shelf of the rest of your trophies from the game winner that you hit, you'll always be able to refer back to the feeling that you had of you succeeding in that moment. But you'll never be able to feel the level, the sense of humility that you can gain by looking at over to your right at the opponent that's feeling the exact opposite of what you're feeling in that moment. So it's a very powerful tool that you can be using, which is put in perspective the feelings that you're experiencing in that moment. You're elated with joy from something that you just achieved. What's somebody else feeling? What's somebody feeling when they just got a call that their parents or their mom or dad was diagnosed with cancer? What's that person feeling in that moment? And when you put all that in perspective, it really shifts and gives you a different reality for that moment, where you think, you know, I feel like the luckiest person, but I'm lucky for so many other reasons, not just for this one, but for the fact that I'm here alive, living, breathing, able to perform at the level I'm performing at, makes you so much more lucky. And what happens when you do that, you start to gain this huge sense of gratitude where you become the luckiest person in the world, which is extremely, extremely powerful.
Excitement in the workplace. This is, as Mindy was saying, a pretty powerful emotion, especially at the workplace. And but I think it's also important to be a bit introspective while you're going through the experience of excitement in the workplace, and think a little bit about how the heck did I get here? In other words, consider the rejections, consider the failures, the distractions it took to get to this point, and enjoy the feeling. That's really important. Magnify the feeling, experience the feeling, but consider as well the lessons learned that you experienced along the journey, because in many cases it is a journey. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about a promotion, or I'm talking about getting special recognition for a project, or I'm talking about getting a new job with a big increase in salary, that dream job that you've been thinking about your entire life, or going from a manager position to an executive, to the C-suite, to an executive manager position. And as you celebrate and as you consider where you are at that moment of celebration and excitement, remember the journey and what it took to get there, and enjoy the momentum, enjoy the experience.
Excitement in relationships. I think that this is, Mindy was talking about how excitement and fear go hand in hand. I think that's absolutely true, that excitement and fear, or excitement and anxiety, live on the same pendulum. And you can't really hide excitement. It's a great, great, great feeling, but it can very quickly turn to anxiety and some fear. So when you're meeting somebody new, you have that excitement, but it also is met with a lot of anxiety. What's this going to be like? Is it going to work out? So excitement comes from this deep place of joy. Look at these faces. You can't, these are not made up. These are not fake emotions. These people are really experiencing excitement, joy, happiness, love, openness, laughter. It comes from having shared experiences with other people. So we're looking for relationships that spark excitement and keep us living in this healthy, happy way of being with others.
Awesome. Okay. So we talked about all the symptoms of each of these three emotions. And a lot of you guys could be thinking like, okay, you talked about how I experience each of these emotions, but now how do I deal with them? When you are in a relationship that's dealing with one of these three core emotions, or when you're performing and one of these emotions come up, or in the workplace, how do you deal with these emotions? So in the next 9 slides, we're going to go through each of these emotions and how to deal with them. So real quick, we only got about 20 minutes left, so we're going to try to shorten. We'll try to open up some questions if we have. Dealing with sadness during a performance. It's important to, like I said, take your time. Experience what that sadness is giving you. And a lot of times it can be a learning experience. When you just broke up, and I know I'm going into the borders of Kristen's
That's all right.
yeah, into your territory, but just from experience, you can, when you break up with somebody, you feel extremely sad. And everybody knows that if you try to run out and try to find another partner, that's extremely unhealthy and nobody wants to be your rebound, right? So taking your time to really feel that sadness. When you lose a championship game, take time to experience what that sadness is telling you. What is it teaching you about how you handle situations and how you handle a loss, and how you are able to bounce back from that? How long does it take you? What do you do when you're in those scenarios? Do you cry? Do you look to talk to people? Do you look to be more introspective? Do you look to be alone? Like, what does that sadness give over to you? What do you learn from it? And sometimes you can even take notes, and it'll be very, very insightful for the next time it happens. You'll be like, okay, I've done this before. I've been in this situation before. What did I do last time? And often you repeat the same exact process without even realizing it. Or sometimes you can change it up based on how you've experienced the last one. That might help you go through that stage in your life a little bit easier. And then once you do get through that process, once you do get through those feelings and experience, now use it as fuel. Don't necessarily experience it as failure. We talked about in the beginning how your mind is a muscle. You don't have to see things as it being a failure. It's not that you're stupid. It's not that you're a failure. It's not that you failed your team. It's not that you failed what you were trying to achieve. It's just that it's a learning experience. You have to see it, whatever happened, as a stage. And now you're going to use that scenario to motivate you and to use it to bounce back, to become greater than you were. And we see this a lot with athletes, where they might lose a championship game, and then the next year they come back even better than they were before, because they used that setback and that failure, I put in quotations because it's not real failure. We don't see it as failure, but we see it as a learning process. And now use that to your advantage, and now become more hungry than everybody else that's you're competing against, because you've experienced what you experienced through that sadness. And like I said, failure doesn't have to define you if you don't let it. It's not something that you failed at. It's just something that's a learning process. Use it as something that you can get one up on somebody else. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean, become the best you through this experience.
I think the same holds true with managing sadness in the workplace. I think it's important to acknowledge the sadness. Take a moment just to say, you know, I'm sad, I'm hurt. I feel bad about whatever happened, about the situation. And take a moment to experience the pain. And another good idea is find your tribe. And by your tribe, you know, you don't have to splash it all over social media, but certainly seek a trusted ally, a confidant, and share the experience. And it's really important to remember the lesson. I recall as a manager years ago, I'd have certain members of my staff would come to me and they'd keep saying the same thing, whatever the situation kept happening over and over and over and over. In other words, they kept experiencing the same cycle, the same mistake, if you will. And I would ask them, what's the lesson? What did you learn? Because it's so important. In order to go forward, you've got to learn the lesson and take the sadness and reframe that sadness into something positive so you can go forward. And then decide, you know, bottom line, what you're going to do about it. Decide what you're going to do differently going forward.
Managing sadness in a relationship is the same as any situation with sadness. It's understanding the grief process, and we all have to. We do a huge disservice to allowing ourselves the time and energy required to go through the entire grief process before we move forward and we wake up and say, okay, this is a new me. I have a new dimension to myself because of that past experience. Something will happen in your life that's painful, whether it's a loss of a relationship, the loss of a game, or the loss of a job. But we go through this process of first we deny it, then we get mad, and then we negotiate in our head and bargain if I had done this, or God, if you'll do this or something. Then we can sink into some deep depression and think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get out of the darkness. And then ultimately we come to this new acceptance, and honoring that process when something brings us down and hurts us is so critical to being ready to take the next step with the next person, job, or performance. So really honoring the grief process.
Okay. So when it comes to anger during performance, I talked about a little bit before in the first slide of dealing with anger and performance. It's important to wait. And again, I think we've all three of us, Denise, Kristen, and myself, we've all talked about how it's important to really experience the emotion in the moment and understand where it's coming from and how it's coming up for you individually as a person, and what are you feeling in that moment. And when it comes to anger, it's so easy to be fast to lash out and be fast to react and impulsively blame somebody or impulsively say something that we wish, and Kristen knows a lot about this, we wish we never ever said to somebody, but since we just reacted way too quickly and we didn't stop and analyze that anger and where it's coming from, a lot of times there's no way to go back, and we regret every single second of that expression of that emotion. So when it comes to dealing with anger, and again, I talked about how anger in performance, your entire team will feel it when you express it, and you can't hide it if it's being expressed. I mean, it's there and it's contagious, and they'll all feel it. And you're bringing down the entire team because energy is contagious. So what you do is just stop, and you're about to impulsively say something or do something, but just stop and wait. Wait. If you can wait 15 seconds, that's a good start. If you can wait 30, even better. If you can wait 60, your chances of you doing anything because of the anger and impulsively doing something that you know you'll regret later, the chances of you doing that if you wait are way, way lower if you just stop and wait. And come back to the moment, breathe and analyze where this anger is coming from, and breathe it out. Take deep breaths. The longer breaths you take, the better. And if you could do these three things, your anger will be diminished in a huge way, and the chances of you saying something or doing something that you wish you never have drop dramatically by just stopping, coming back to the moment, and breathing to analyze what you're feeling and why it's coming up for you.
Well, when you're in the workplace, the first thing that I encourage you to do is to acknowledge the anger. Figure out what triggered it. Is it a past experience? Does this person, if they made you really angry in the workplace, do they remind you of somebody at a former job that really made you mad or had some impact on your job, your former job? Is it somebody that's a bully that's giving you a hard time and just hit a trigger? Is it a value that's being dishonored? Respect, I used that earlier as an example, where you're being disrespected and it's triggering you. Figure out what it is that triggered the anger, and take an adult time out. We do it with children, right? We ask them to go somewhere to a separate space and just, relax and regroup. And the same holds true at the workplace. Remember, you never want to let them see you sweat. Experience the anger, But think about the consequences. If you do what you're really thinking about or what your body's really telling you you want to do physically, chances are it may not have the best outcome. So develop a different type of plan of action. Reframe the situation and move forward. Again, because it can have severe, severe consequences if you don't consider, if reframing and figuring out what you're angry about and not coming up with a different, more positive plan of action.
Managing anger in relationships is all about setting boundaries for yourself and for others. So we have to first set boundaries for ourselves in terms of what we're really willing to tolerate in a relationship and how we're willing to respond to others in a relationship. It's also important to recognize setting boundaries for yourself and how far you will go when you're angry in a relationship without pausing and saying, oh my gosh, if I say those words, am I going to destroy my relationship with somebody that I really care about? Expression is key. The bottom line is that we say things and do things all the time. We need to recognize that in our most intimate relationships with friends and family and partners, we can easily regret things that we say. So taking time out, taking a breath, and deciding whether that's really the message that we want to get across is key. If you're angry, go be by yourself, figure it out, throw some rocks, hit some tennis balls, do something that's productive, but do not say words that are unkind and are going to destroy an important relationship that you have in your life.
Okay. We're going to try to stick this, we're going to keep this to 6 minutes if we can, because we want to be respectful of everybody's time. So the last emotion and how to deal with it, excitement. Dealing with excitement is, like I mentioned this before, but using perspective. If you feel like you're stressed in a moment leading up to a performance, like we mentioned before, it can often be mistaken for fear, or fear could be mistaken, or excitement can be mistaken for fear. Really, you're excited and you're only scared because you're not interpreting the emotion properly. So when you are scared, which is really excited, you're stressed. And you can be positively stressed or negatively stressed. Positive stress can be good because you could use it to pump yourself up before a performance and get ready for that moment and get into that zone, get into that space where you feel like you're going to dominate at whatever position you are meant to dominate in. You're going to do it with your whole entire being and allow your muscle memory and your mechanics to take over the performance the way you've practiced for so long. So using perspective, using positive imagery is also very effective, where you think about when you feel like you're scared, shift that fear to something positive, where you would use your mental ability to think about what a positive outcome of what you're about to perform at could look like. And that's also reframing, where instead of thinking of something negatively, just switch it to a positive, more helpful outcome, where instead of you thinking you're going to miss and you're going to fail and you're going to lose, think of yourself, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to perform the way I know how to, the way I've practiced for so long, and allow your abilities to be trusted.
In the workplace, take a moment to acknowledge the pain, the failures, the setbacks, the distractions that it took to reach the milestone. Acknowledge the journey. Acknowledge the long journey that it probably took. Consider the preparation that you went through, the planning that you went through, the retooling that you went through, the hiccups that you went through, and embrace. And then after you've done all that, you've looked back, take a moment to embrace the emotion, and be humble. Be humble. Just as this is an experience that you're excited about and you feel good about it, it's important to be humble, because not everybody may be experiencing the same emotion that you are at the time, based on the project that you just did very well in, or the promotion that you just got. You may have beat somebody out in a promotion. And so it's important to be humble and to remember the journey of how you got to where you are. And lastly, and probably most important, take time out to celebrate.
Well, benefiting from excitement in a relationship is that you get to feel the love. You get to feel appreciated, accepted, enjoy life and experiences with others on every level, whether that's your children, your parents, your siblings, your friends, your partner. That's the benefit of the relationship.
You are more than welcome to ask your questions if you have anything you want clarified, or you have any questions on some of the stuff we talked about, maybe some of the emotions, maybe another emotion that comes up for you in your specific lifestyle. You can ask that. And if you don't want to ask it live, you can find us at yellowmentality.com. You can email us each of our names, if you know how to spell it, at yellowmentality.com. And you can ask your questions if you want to reach out, connect, whatever it is. You're more than welcome to find us at yellowmentality.com. Also, this is the first of many webinars that we're going to be doing together. And if you like this, then share it with your friends, tell your friends about it, and get connected. We're on Facebook. Find us at Yellow Mentality on Facebook or on Instagram. Reach out, connect. We love the interaction. If you want to request a topic for another webinar that you feel is relevant to other people, or maybe even yourself, you're more than welcome to, again, reach out. And we love to connect with people. That's what we do. We're human beings. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good night.